I've spent the last decade feeling like a utility, something my family plugged into when they needed power, and now I know why. It all started 2 weeks before Christmas, right as my annual restricted stock units were about to vest, the kind of money that changes lives, or in my family's case, funds their entire existence. I was in my cramped Austin apartment kitchen, staring at my chipped laminate countertop, scrolling mindlessly, when an email popped up from an unknown address. Subject line, "They see you as a source, not a daughter." Instantly, my gut twisted. Spam, right? I almost hit delete, but that small, nagging voice of paranoia, the one I'd developed after years of sacrificing my own stability for theirs, made me tap it open. No body text, just a single discrete audio file attached. I clicked play, and the sound of my parents' ridiculously oversized, custom-built dining room filled my tiny kitchen. My father, Robert, or Rob Jensen, was there, his voice booming and arrogant. My mother, Victoria, or Tori Jensen, contributed her usual sharp, airy commentary, and my 27-year-old brother, Trent, just moaned in agreement. They were laughing. Not the strained, polite laughs they give me when I tell them about my latest promotion at the tech firm, but genuine, cruel amusement. "The ATM is vesting next month," Dad's voice cut through the background noise, slightly muffled like the phone was on a table. "We need to make sure she transfers that capital before she gets any ideas about saving it." Mom let out a high-pitched, fake-sounding giggle. "Oh, she won't. Clara is so reliably predictable," she scoffed, making the words sound like an insult. "She actually thinks that investing in Trent's visionary photography studio is a good use of that money. Bless her little engineer heart." Trent, the aspiring lifestyle influencer who hasn't held a steady job since college, chimed in, sounding completely entitled. "Seriously? I told her I need that new 8K Hasselblad to capture the texture of light for my next gallery showing. She eats that stuff up. As long as the ATM keeps spitting out cash, who cares?" The room spun. The background noise of the conversation, now about booking a last-minute ski trip to Vail, funded entirely by my forthcoming stock grant, faded to a dull roar. The word ATM. It hit me like a physical blow, a sudden, brutal clarity that shattered 7 years of willful ignorance. My mind didn't just feel rage. It snapped back to the moment I first became their ATM. I was 22, fresh out of college, finally booking my dream solo trip to Kyoto, something I'd saved meticulously since high school. The itinerary was printed, the flights confirmed. Then Mom called, crying, saying Dad had a major business emergency, a fake investment scheme he'd fallen for, and they would lose the suburban house if I didn't send $20,000 immediately. I canceled Kyoto in a daze, sacrificing the trip, the cancellation fees, and my dream, all with a single bank transfer. "You're the only one we can count on, Claire. You saved us. We don't know what we'd do without you." Now I knew exactly what they'd do. They'd laugh and call me a machine. Snapping back to the present, I felt a cold, liberating fury. I looked around my rental apartment, the peeling wallpaper, the thrifted sofa, the kitchen appliances from the Reagan administration, everything I'd denied myself to keep them afloat and make Trent feel like a real artist. I was 29, successful by every professional metric, and living like a student because my savings account was essentially a holding tank for my family's next luxury expense. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Mom. "Don't forget to call Trent's art dealer and confirm that wire transfer for his equipment. Love you, sweetie." That sickening juxtaposition of casual manipulation and fake affection was the final nail in the coffin. I picked up my phone and replayed the audio file again, listening intently this time. Not to the content, but to the quality. It was a close recording, not a surveillance recording. Someone was sitting at the table with them, close enough to press record without being noticed. and that person had risked everything to send it to me. I didn't recognize any specific background sounds to identify the person, but I silently thanked them. My mind was suddenly crystal clear. I was done. Done being the daughter who pays, the sister who enables, the predictable engineer who funnels her hard-earned money to keep their precarious, entitled lifestyle from collapsing. My stock grant, $150,000 this year, was vesting in 10 days. They were already spending it on Vail. I walked straight to my laptop, opened my work VPN, and dialed the cell of the head of my department, Diane. It was 11:30 p.m., but Diane always respects results, and I'd just landed a massive cloud migration contract for the firm. "Clara, everything all right?" she asked, her voice instantly sharp. "I need to take my accrued PTO, starting tomorrow. All 3 weeks," I said, my voice shockingly steady. "The migration contract is signed, sealed, and paid. All deliverables are complete." A momentary pause. "Wow. Okay. You absolutely earned it. I'll process the paperwork first thing. Where are you heading?" "Somewhere cold," I replied, already opening a new browser window. 20 minutes later, I had booked a direct flight to Portland, an SUV rental, and a remote, high-end, oceanfront cabin at Cannon Beach, Oregon, the kind of place I used to mentally budget and immediately dismiss. The cabin had a soaking tub, a private chef option, and 0 cell service. Next, I executed the financial lockdown. I logged into my bank account, and with a series of clicks that felt profoundly satisfying, I canceled every single automatic payment. $3,500 for the suburban house mortgage, $900 for Dad's massive truck payment, $600 for Mom's country club membership, and Trent's pathetic $1,200 monthly studio allowance. The confirmation screens provided the purest form of satisfaction I'd ever experienced. I secured my digital life, changing every password, enabling 2FA on everything, including the family Netflix account I was paying for. Finally, I logged on to the local catering company where I had already placed a massive $2,000 order for the elaborate Christmas Eve dinner I planned to host at my parents' house. I changed the delivery address to the city's busiest fire station downtown, adding a note: "To our first responders, enjoy the holidays. From a grateful citizen." I hung up the phone feeling lighter than air. It was 1:15 a.m. The workhorse was dead. Clara was packing. I placed my phone on the nightstand, silencing it completely. Tomorrow I'd be gone, sipping local Oregon wine while they stood on the doorstep of my small, rekeyed apartment, wondering why the cash dispenser had suddenly run dry. My liberation had begun. I woke up the next morning feeling a clarity I hadn't experienced since I was a child. The last cashmere sweater I owned, a gift to myself years ago, was tucked into my small suitcase. The zipper glided shut, sealing in my small, perfect act of rebellion. My phone was vibrating against the nightstand, practically buzzing across the surface like an angry hornet, and Rob's name flashed on the screen. He was calling on my private cell, the one they only used for serious money transfers. I stared at it, letting it ring 4 times before I finally answered, keeping my voice utterly devoid of emotion, my fingers resting on the finished suitcase. "Hello?" The word was clipped. "Clara, what in God's name did you do?" My father's voice was a roar of entitled indignation. "The bank just called. The truck payment was declined. They're threatening to send a tow truck. Fix it, now!" The old me, the predictable ATM they mocked, would instantly spiral into panic, scrambling for my laptop, stammering apologies, and frantically transferring emergency funds. "Enjoy the holiday." I watched their faces on the tiny Ring camera screen as their phones chimed simultaneously. Tori opened hers first. Her expression transitioned from despair to utter horror as she listened. Rob leaned over her shoulder, his face draining of all color. Trent took a step back from the door, a flush of guilty comprehension creeping up his neck. "Who sent her this?" Rob hissed, looking wildly around the empty hallway. "She can't just—" "The house is in danger," Tori gasped, her voice strangled. Trent stared at the phone, then at my locked door, and the chilling realization finally dawned on him. "She's gone," he whispered, and those 2 words, "She's gone," echoed in the silent, cold hallway. Gone. Not just absent, but irrevocably gone from their control. I took one last long look at their stunned, defeated faces, savoring the moment of perfect, unadulterated reckoning. Then I powered my phone off completely, set it down, and picked up the menu. The workhorse had officially become the gatekeeper. 7 years of financial and emotional manipulation was crashing hard against a simple, electronic barrier and my perfect, ice-cold immunity to their guilt. My finger hovered over the intercom dismiss button. What was there even left to say? What words could bridge the enormous, yawning gap between their reality, one where I was an obligation, and mine, where I was finally free? A tiny, stubborn flicker of my former self, the one desperate for their approval, tried to surface, whispering about duty. But when I remembered Liam's words, the sound of their laughter on that audio file, and the sheer audacity of calling me the ATM, the flicker died instantly. There was nothing left to save. I tapped the dismiss button on the notification. The gate feed cut out, plunging my kitchen into silence. In the quiet of my new home, I unpacked a set of delicate crystal wine glasses I'd bought the day before. They were beautifully impractical, ridiculously unnecessary, and exactly what I wanted. No one had to approve the purchase. No one could question whether a piece of non-essential decor was worth it. The feeling of financial freedom was still something I was learning to speak fluently. I set them carefully into the cabinet, arranging them just so. The faint sound of a car engine starting and fading into the distance was the only indication that Tori had left. She was gone. I opened a bottle of Chianti I had been saving, a deep ruby red, and poured myself a glass. I raised it in a silent, heartfelt toast to the woman I'd become, to boundaries that hold, to freedom hard-won, and to a life that was finally, completely, authentically mine. When my phone buzzed again, it wasn't the gate camera. It was Liam. "Glad to hear you kept the boundary up. They don't deserve you." I smiled and typed back, "Thank you for everything. See you soon." The feeling of sovereignty had never been better. I spent the afternoon setting a massive mosaic vase on my new entryway table, stepping back to admire the burst of crimson and sapphire against the cream walls. 4 months in this house, and I was still finding new ways to make it mine. The vase was an indulgence, a bold statement, just like the abstract painting hanging above it, splashing the wall with colors that reminded me of sunsets I now planned to see, not just dream about. My phone pinged with a calendar reminder I had set months ago: book Italy. I walked into my home office, not a converted closet, but a room with tall windows overlooking my yard, and settled into my leather chair. My laptop was open to a travel site: first-class tickets to Rome, a month-long itinerary through Tuscany and the Amalfi Coast, the exact trip I had canceled 7 years ago to bail out Trent and Rob. The cursor hovered over the purchase button. The total made me blink. It was nearly 4 times what I'd budgeted all those years ago. But this time, there was no flicker of hesitation, no mental balance sheet calculating whose needs this money could fix. I clicked purchase. The confirmation screen filled the display, and I felt nothing but pure, unadulterated satisfaction. No guilt, no worry, no imaginary debt. My needs were finally registering in black, not crushing red. A few days later, Liam was on my porch, holding a bottle of wine. "You're officially the first person to use the front door instead of the interrogation gate," I told him, swinging the door open. Liam laughed, handing me the wine. Historic moment. I should have taken a picture. I ushered him inside, watching his eyes widen as he took in the open, airy space. "Clara, this is gorgeous. It feels like you." That is the best compliment. Over a home-cooked pasta dinner, we talked about everything, pointedly ignoring the Jensens, not because they were taboo, but because they were gloriously irrelevant. When Liam finally brought up Trent, he asked about you again, looking ragged. I found I could listen without that old familiar twist in my stomach. "He'll figure it out eventually," I said, refilling our glasses.
Or he won't. Either way, it's not my problem anymore.
2 weeks later, I was back at my desk reviewing quarterly financials when Jenna, a new ambitious sales rep, dropped into the chair across from me. Her face bore the tight, pinched look I remembered seeing in my own mirror years ago. "Everything all right?" I asked, knowing exactly what was coming. "My cousin's kid needs braces," she sighed, running a hand through her hair. $5,000. She asked if I could help out since I make so much money now. She made bitter air quotes. "And you're considering it?" I said. "She's family, Clara, and the kid is great, and—" I leaned forward, interrupting her. "Let me give you some advice I learned the absolute hardest way. Don't ever set yourself on fire just to keep someone else warm. Your value is non-negotiable. Say no." Her eyes widened slightly, absorbing the intensity in my voice. "Trust me," I added, my voice low and fierce. "I've been the Human Torch. The scars take years to heal." The morning of my flight to Italy, I stood in my bedroom, zipping my final suitcase closed. Everything I needed, nothing I didn't. The simplicity felt like the ultimate luxury. I carried the bag downstairs, through the beautiful, quiet house that belonged only to me. At the front door, I set the security system, locked up, and stepped out into the bright morning sun. The warmth touched my face, and I smiled. Not the practiced, people-pleasing smile I'd perfected over years of giving away pieces of myself, but a real, unhurried, peaceful smile. My driver was waiting. The workhorse had been released from her harness, and the journey, finally, was all mine.